Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, inside the revival at Asbury University in Kentucky that's now spreading to other college campuses across the country. Many say the revival has deeply affected them, as one evangelist tells how the Lord told him this revival was coming years ago.
10 years ago, the Lord said to me, there's a move of God coming to Kentucky that will change the course of the land.
The minute I walked in, I just had to stand still. I was just in awe. And there was part of me was thinking, maybe I should take my shoes off because I'm in the presence of the Lord.
And we'll hear from people who joined in the Asbury revival in 1970 and came back for the latest move of God more than 50 years later. In the Middle East, riots break out in a city in the West Bank after another Palestinian attack against Israelis. We'll bring you the story from Jerusalem. A network of Chinese agents at work in America, hunting down, intimidating, and even killing dissidents. Experts say it's part of the mission of the Chinese Communist Party using so-called police stations.
The CCP is attempting to impose its control in every country around the world.
And a strong opening at the box office for the new movie Jesus Revolution, about the Jesus movement in the 1970s. Those stories and more today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with the Asbury revival, which has moved off campus and into the community. The hope is that the services will spread from place to place and spark a nationwide move of God. It's a strategy Asbury followed after a similar wave in 1970 that helped kick off the Jesus Revolution. Wendy Griffith spoke with some people who joined in the worship back then and came back a little over 50 years later for more.
When I walked in those doors, it was almost like 53 years hadn't passed. The same spirit just washed over me.
As an 18-year-old high school senior, Reverend Jim McElrath was working as a janitor at Asbury when revival broke out on that snowy morning, February 3rd, 1970.
It's just blessed everybody. I'm not kidding you, the greatest outpouring of God's love and the Holy Spirit, and I can't express it. I tell you, I'm just amazed.
The spirit of worship, the attitude, the people there lifting their hands in praise, people kneeling around the altar, just nobody really leading. The Holy Spirit led. I didn't feel anything different than I felt that morning when I walked in 1970.
A large church pastor make a confession and his wife, and that opened the door that if a pastor of a large church had something to confess, we all had something to confess.
76-year-old Harold Rainwater has been the mayor of Wilmore, Kentucky for 47 years. He also heads up Asbury's equine program that teaches students the art of horse training. But in 1970, Harold owned Dynamite, a restaurant right next to Hughes Auditorium that featured the best honey buns in town. One day, he noticed the students didn't show up to get their honey buns.
I really was frustrated, to be honest with you. I hate to say that, but I thought, I'm going to lose $100, And I didn't really realize what was happening, until later.
Although Harold didn't have a profound encounter with the Lord back then, he still gets emotional talking about his grandfather, who came to Asbury in the 1940s.
He was a blacksmith working on horses, and they needed a stoker for the fire here at Asbury because they had coal then. So the goal for him was to come here and keep students warm. And because he was a fire builder, and he rang the bell at the church. And so he told my dad, build a fire and ring the bell.
In 1970, there was no social media to help spread the word. News, however, spread quickly, and just like back then, the revival made national headlines.
So my understanding is this began in a completely conventional service, and a boy got up and started talking about his own flaws, and then something changed in the atmosphere and it never ended. Is that fair?
That's completely what happened.
The lawn in front of Hughes Auditorium was covered with thousands of people from all over the country, and some from as far away as Brazil, kneeling and praying. No one seemed to care they weren't inside. It's been 53 years since the last great move of God swept through Asbury, and this time the revival is even bigger than before. All you have to do is open the door. Evangelist Rick Curry, who grew up about 30 miles from Wilmore, says God told him this kind of outpouring was coming to Kentucky.
Probably about 10 years ago, the Lord said to me, there's a move of God coming to Kentucky that will change the course of the land. And for the last 10 years, we've been networking and bringing leaders together, really contending for a move of God, for a cause of God greater than any one of us individually. And so we've just been crying out for that. So when this broke out, we just knew this is where we need to be.
The minute I walked in, I just had to stand still. I was just in awe. And there was part of me was thinking, maybe I should take my shoes off because I'm in the presence of the Lord.
26-year-old grad student Meg Helton thought she'd missed her chance to see a revival on campus when it didn't happen 3 years ago during the 50th anniversary.
I ended up being there for 8 hours thinking I didn't care about what the time was. I just knew I had to be there at that moment. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I remember just being in prayer and just allowing myself to cry and cry and cry, thinking, okay, the Lord doesn't care how many tears there are because someday he'll wipe away those tears. He knows why I'm crying.
Student body president Allison Perfader calls what's happening here a supernatural experience.
There were a couple people there that I was surprised to see, if that makes sense. Just like, oh, you don't really like chapel. I wonder why you're here. And so I felt something had started, and then we just kept telling each other, and then we went from a school to a church to a mission field in a week.
Seminary student Daniel Moye called this revival life-changing.
I never thought I would be a pastor. And over the past week, I'm not saying that I'm going to be, but for the first time in my life this past week, I've thought, oh, maybe I could be. Maybe the Lord's calling me in that direction.
Because I think you already have your first sermon.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I think so. It'll be a good one.
Harold believes this young generation has gotten a bad rap, and what they really need is someone to believe in them.
I think us white hairs have kind of got to get out of the way and let the next generation come on and believe in them and empower them. I want to instill in them that they can be anybody they want to be.
He sees the revival as proof of God's love, not just to Gen Z, but to all of us, and a chance to get right with the one who made us.
We're born and we die and we have a dash. What's your dash? Did you build your fire? Did you ring the bell? Did you make a difference?
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Wilmore, Kentucky.
Awesome story there. Well, coming up, riots in a West Bank city in Israel after another deadly Palestinian attack on Israelis. We'll have that story for you when we come back.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back to NewsWatch. Riots in a West Bank city in Israel after a Palestinian carried out another deadly attack on Israelis. The attack happened while Israeli and Palestinian Authority officials met in Jordan in an attempt to reduce tensions ahead of the upcoming Muslim Holy Month. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story from Jerusalem.
The terrorists shot and killed two brothers, Hillel and Yagel Yaniv, as they sat in their car in the Arab town of Huwara, south of Nablus. The brothers were from the nearby Jewish community of Har Bracha, located on the biblical mountain of blessing.
It was a cruel attack. It is heartbreaking to think of the immense pain of the family that lost both its sons, Hillel and Yagel. It is a terrible thing.
Palestinian terrorists have murdered 13 Israelis since the beginning of February. Israeli security forces have carried out a number of deadly counterterrorism operations recently, including last week in Nablus.
We expect difficult days ahead of us. It may be here in Judea and Samaria, in the Jerusalem area, or in the Gaza region.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visited the site on Monday and says he has given clear instructions to the Israeli security forces.
Ensure readiness to face all threats, reinforce troops and activities on the ground, and most importantly, reach and apprehend the terrorists.
In Huwara, Palestinians celebrated the attack by handing out sweets, but the celebration was short-lived when hundreds of Israelis descended on the town to take revenge, clashing with Palestinians and setting houses, cars, and a junkyard on fire. One Palestinian was reportedly killed. Israeli security forces used tear gas and stun grenades to restore order. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said security forces were pursuing the killer of the brothers and called for calm.
I ask that even when the blood is boiling and the spirit is hot, not to take the law into your hands. I would like to let the IDF and the security forces do their job. I remind you, in the last few weeks, they have eliminated dozens of terrorists and prevented dozens of terrorist attacks.
The attack took place as Israeli and Palestinian Authority officials were holding a security summit in Aqaba, Jordan. Jordan called the meeting, which included U.S. and Egyptian officials, in a bid to calm rising tensions ahead of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan 3 weeks from now, when terrorism often ramps up. According to a statement from the Jordanian Foreign Ministry, the two sides agreed to de-escalate the situation. With no end in sight, the Yaniv brothers' mother, Esti, delivered a message to the young people of her community. God sends us grace. Even with this painful blow, he sends us grace. We have a huge hole in our heart. Nothing will ever fill this hole. Not construction, not protests, nothing. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, Chinese agents spying, threatening, kidnapping, even trying to kill their own citizens. And it's not just happening in Beijing. It's going on right here in the U.S. Now Republicans and Democrats are speaking out against it. We'll bring you that story right after this.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher is leading a group of bipartisan lawmakers warning about so-called Chinese police stations here in the U.S. Gallagher is the chairman of the House China Select Committee. Others have also warned about a network of Chinese agents at work right here in America. Their mission is to hunt down, intimidate, and even kill pro-democracy dissidents. In cities across the U.S. and the world, these agents operate out of, quote, police stations. Dale Hurd brings us the details.
Above this noodle shop in New York's Chinatown, agents of the Chinese Communist government operated an overseas police station for years. There are more than 100 of them worldwide. They don't usually look like a police station. They may only be back rooms, but they're staffed by Chinese government officials. The police stations, along with so-called aid stations across the U.S., are used by the Chinese government to harass and threaten pro-democracy Chinese immigrants to stop speaking out against the regime and go back to China, even kidnapping them if necessary. One of their targets is Li Jianji, a pro-democracy activist who was tortured repeatedly in Chinese psychiatric hospitals before he was able to flee to the U.S., where the persecution has continued. Xi, who does not speak English, told us Chinese government hitmen in the Los Angeles area have tried to kill him 3 times, twice with a car and once by stabbing him in the neck, calling him a traitor as they fled the scene. Chinese government agents and supporters regularly film and disrupt pro-democracy demonstrations in American cities. They warn activists they're being reported to Beijing and that their family back home will be arrested. The world has known about these police stations for many months now. A key question for the U.S. government is why almost nothing has been done about it. A recent New York Times report made it look like the FBI is on the case, highlighting a raid on that Chinese police station in New York's Chinatown. But that raid happened last fall, and the FBI didn't shut it down, it only gathered evidence. When we asked the FBI if it's closed any of the Chinese police stations across the U.S. or brought charges against anyone, it declined comment, saying that FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony to the Senate Homeland Security Committee last year would serve as the agency's statement on the matter.
We are aware of the existence of these stations. I had to be careful about discussing our specific investigative work, but suffice to say, I can tell you from an FBI Director perspective, I'm deeply concerned about this, and I'm not going to just let it lie.
Laura Harth, with the Spanish group that uncovered the extent of these overseas police stations, says it's been a struggle to get governments to do anything about it.
I don't think most of them knew about the police stations, obviously. That's clear from their response. Obviously, we had a response in the US, we had some response in Australia, some in Canada, where the Royal Canadian Mounted Police head came out saying, oh yes, we know that this is an issue, we will act on it. Yet nothing happened.
Chinese democracy activist Jingyu Wang is a U.S. resident now living under police protection in the Netherlands, where Chinese agents have repeatedly harassed and threatened him. He was in prison for 2 months in Dubai at the request of Chinese authorities and has had to fight off a knife attack in the Netherlands.
How can I help you? Why you call me?
This is a phone call he recorded from the Chinese embassy in Norway, saying he's been reported to police as having a bomb. The Chinese government has imprisoned his parents to force him to return to China.
They asked me go to Rotterdam, Chinese overseas police station for surrender, and they asked me go back to China. They asked me thinking about my parents from 2022 February to 2022, I think April. Almost every day they will make over 100 phone call to me. Every day, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., keep make phone call to me.
These overseas police stations are only one part of a massive campaign to control Chinese citizens living in other nations. The communist government has also used what it calls Operation Fox Hunt and Skynet to apprehend citizens abroad under the guise of stopping financial crimes.
So the police stations are really just the tip of the iceberg of what we're looking at when we talk about the transnational repression and policing campaigns coming from the Chinese Communist Party to return people to China at all costs, by all means.
Harth says the Chinese government has reportedly forced the return of an incredible 230,000 Chinese back to the mainland between 2021 and last year.
The CCP is attempting to impose its control in every country around the world.
China expert Bradley Thayer believes one reason for the lack of action by the Justice Department has been a failure by American leaders to face up to the China threat.
The lack of responsiveness regarding the China threat is something which has plagued us for decades. This lack of concern which plagues the American elite, and that would be universities, media, so many of our political leaders, Wall Street, Silicon Valley.
The FBI recently asked the Chinese American community to report any harassment by Chinese government agents, which Thayer agreed was odd since the FBI, with its vast spying powers, probably knows who the agents are. Li Jianji wishes the FBI would do something. He told us he reported the attempts against his life to the FBI, but it never responded. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Turning now to the aftermath of those devastating earthquakes in Turkey. Operation Blessing is on the ground helping survivors begin rebuilding their lives, but the situation is still often dangerous. CBN's Brody Carter has this report from some of the hardest hit areas where some quake victims now also have to contend with crimes like robbery.
And trying to rob as much as they can. People are getting desperate.
Danger in Turkey remains, even after 3 quakes and numerous aftershocks rocked 10 historic cities.
There's been multiple earthquakes since we've been on the ground, so it got determined that it's not safe to stay inside.
We're here in the city of Hatay, the most devastated city recently as of Monday to be hit by Turkey's 3rd earthquake. What you're seeing behind me right now is the only road into the city. That means supplies coming in through this road have been very treacherously and also slowly coming into this warehouse to Operation Blessing, which has now turned into a distribution center because of word of mouth.
The need is everything. These people have nothing. Most of them are living in tents or their cars. They have no hygiene products. Most of them left their house in the middle of the night because it happened while they were sleeping. They have no shoes on their feet. They have no socks. They have nothing.
IDP, internal displaced person.
And that's what's happened.
Turkish people are IDPs in this moment.
Estimates vary between 1 and 2 million people left homeless, like Hakan Hamaraku. He and his family now live in tents and temporary housing outside his dilapidated home. He's forced to stare at an unwanted yet familiar scene that has overtaken Turkey's beautiful landscape.
I threw my children and my wife from one room to another to escape, and it worked for us.
Tonight I'm making steaks. Oh, you're making steak tonight.
Even amid the chaos, Operation Blessing remains steadfast on its mission to help those suffering and share God's love with those in need.
We're here to help people first, water, shelter, food, medicine, But there's some people that has been asking for it. It's like, oh, you guys are Christian. Oh, can you pray for me? Wow. So it's like, it's very powerful too. It's not meaning that they are gonna, but the seed is being planted.
It has been weeks since the initial earthquake devastated the region. Thankfully, Operation Blessing has been on the ground since then, and they will continue to be for weeks to come. But they will leave. And when they do so, they're hopeful that they leave the tools behind needed here in Turkey so that the people who are struggling and suffering will one day be able to thrive and rebuild their lives. Brody Carter, reporting in Turkey, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. If you would like to help Operation Blessing's disaster relief efforts after this terrible tragedy, you can call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com. Or you can send a donation to Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Or text OBDR to 7177. Anything you can do will be appreciated. Coming up, a strong opening at the weekend box office for the new film Jesus Revolution, which tells the true story of the Jesus movement and Pastor Chuck Smith in the 1970s. We'll have that for you when we come back.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Audiences turned out for the new movie Jesus Revolution as it opened in theaters this weekend. The film finishing number 3 at the box office, bringing in an estimated $15.5 million. Deadline.com reports that was far higher than the initial estimate of $6 to $7 million. The movie tells the true story of the Jesus movement, spiritual awakening in the 1970s, and the involvement of Pastor Chuck Smith and a group of hippies looking for truth. The film stars Kelsey Grammer and Jonathan Roumie of The Chosen, and it has a 99% favorable audience score on RottenTomatoes.com. That's great to hear that news, and that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with CBNNews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you join us next time. Have a great day.